the schedule here. Yeah, well, you know, when I was, I guess I should say something about my cancer because it's mentioned, and you know, I've been fighting cancer, lung cancer, since I was, since 2018, and it's all been successful. I've been cured because I had the type of lung cancer where they could cut the tumor out and it's gone. It hadn't moved anywhere else. It hadn't spread, so you're cured. Well, the first surgery lasted 4 years, and then it came back. And so they said, well, it hadn't spread anywhere, it's localized, we'll cut that out too. And I said, you know, Doc, if you keep trying to cure me like this, I'm not going to have any lungs left. But, you know, they took it out, and sure enough, you know, I stayed cured for a couple of years, and last year it came back. And this time it came back in the pleura. It's not in the lung, it's in the liquid sac that surrounds the lungs. And they can't operate on it, and they said, you know, we can treat it, and we can, these drugs, newer drugs, and Keytruda is one that I've actually heard advertised on TV, and it's, that's what they're going to give me, and, you know, 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever it is, you know, it's more time. And so I've got the port installed for my injections, and I'll start those next week. And I think everything will be fine, you know. Well, I mean, I'm going to die, you know, like we all will. But, you know, I suppose, you know, my expiration date's going to come up a little sooner. So, but, you know, and I was sitting with KC at Sancho's, and I think Bunny was there. I don't know, we were talking about something. I guess we were talking about this, and I said, you know, I'm not afraid to die. And somebody said, well, I am. And I said, well, you know, and then, you know, I told the story to KC, and the next thing you know, I'm signed up to do this. Be careful what you say around KC, all right? So, the story I told her was a story that happened when I was 3 years old, and I went to bed, and all of a sudden in my dream, you know, I was out in outer space. It was pretty black, a few distant stars. And I looked around and I saw some beautiful, bright galaxies and stars and nebulas, and it was just beautiful. So I went over there, and I didn't have a body, but I could see. And the only other thing there was no sound, but I could feel. And it was the feeling of the most intense, almost couldn't stand it, peace and joy that I've ever felt in my life. So, you know, I'm just hanging out, you know, and it kind of begs the question, well, where were you before you kind of showed up? I don't know. There's a lot I don't know. But I know this, that, you know, what happened was, as I was just kind of hanging out and feeling peaceful and joyful and admiring the beauty of the universe, I started to feel a gravitational tug. And it pulled me towards a blue dot, which we know where we are, and it kind of turned into a beam of light straight towards Earth. And I remember, as I was heading down, kind of screaming in my head, no, no, no. And then everything went black. And I went through the roof and straight into my mother's stomach. Okay, so, you know, I sat up on the edge of my bed, you know, when I woke up, and you know, my little brother was in a crib besides my bed, and, you know, I just sat there thinking about it, went back to sleep, and, you know, discounted it as a dream, you know, weird, but it kept coming back, and, you know, it was the exact same frame of a short film strip, each and every time. The colors, the sequence of events, the whole 9 yards. It was always the same. And as I didn't have the vocabulary to tell anybody about it, at 3 years old. And as I grew older, I didn't want to tell anybody about it because I thought they'd think I was crazy. And so I really kept it to myself my entire life. But I do know that I finally reached an age where I realized, what does a 3-year-old know about outer space and planets and nebulas? And what does a 3-year-old know that, landing in your mother's stomach is a part of, pregnancy and getting born? There's no reason why I should have known any of that, but I did. And so, as I grew older, I took biology and chemistry and physics, and I started learning about the physical laws of the universe, and I just loved that stuff, when they talked about, matter cannot be created or destroyed, it can only be changed. And I kind of thought back to the dream, and I said, well, I wonder if that's the same thing with the soul. I mean, can it be created and destroyed? I don't think so. So anyway, it's when I got into college and started reading about Eastern religion, I read the Bhagavad Gita from the Hindu religion, and there was a part in there that really knocked my socks off. It was just a short sentence, and basically they said, that which is can never cease to be, and that which is not can never come into being. Okay? And that made sense to me, especially when I compare it to the physical laws of the universe. The same type of thing. Our souls, in my belief, have been here since the beginning of time, all of us. We're sitting here in these bodies, but we've got this soul, this light within us that we all share. And this is a good environment to share, your soul. But anyway, I basically realized, look, there's a big difference between life and existence. Life is what's going to happen to our physical body. We're born, we grow old, we get cancer, we die. And then our body returns to dust. It doesn't, it's still around, in atomic form. It turns into who knows what. But the soul, is something that can't be destroyed, can't be changed. It's with us, always has been, always will be. It kind of, the Eastern religions believe in reincarnation. And I think that, that voice, me screaming, no, 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 as I'm headed for Earth, kind of makes me think that I knew what I was in for, and I did not want to go through it again. Here we are. But anyway, so where was I before? I recall this dream. I have no idea. And it begs the question, okay, well, if you existed before you were born, then where are you going to go after you die? Where's your soul going to go after you die? And of course, we learn as we're growing up, the easy answer to that is we're going to heaven. And whatever that means to you, but there is a place, there is something after death, after this body dies. I'll still be around, And you might be sad, that, oh, Michael Bill, he's not around anymore. But I am, I will be. My body will be gone, but that's about it. finally, after believing this all my life, I actually decided to Google, what do religions say about pre-existence? So I just did this last week. I just learned all this stuff. In Hindu, like I say, it's a cycle of birth and death until you get it right. Until, you've overcome the bad karma enough to move on to nirvana or heaven. And that is something, I tend to believe that myself, okay? In Buddhism, same type of thing. It's a reincarnation type of thing. And we're all looking to liberate ourselves from this cycle of birth and death, birth and death, birth and death. To where we can stay with God in that place, in heaven, nirvana. The Mormons believe that people existed as spirits in God's presence before earth. And they think the spirit was in existence before we were born, and that pretty much the same type of thing, except they don't believe in reincarnation. Islam believes that souls were created in adult form when God created Adam. So back when Adam was created, all of our souls were created. And the Quran mentions Adam's descendants. And, most schools of thought reject reincarnation. Some sects of Islam believe that reincarnation is a thing. Christianity generally denies the pre-existence of individual human souls, a concept condemned as heresy in the Second Council of Constantinople. So I believe in this pre-existence thing, so I'm just asking all you hardcore Christians out there to give me 30-second head start when we leave here today. I'm not sure what the punishment is for heresy, but I'm sure it's not good. So, there's various beliefs, that the religions have, and let me ask you this. I can't believe that God would only give me a glimpse of what existence was like before I was born. Has anybody had any kind of an experience like that?
I've had a different type of experience. Knowing that we were all one and all connected together.
Yeah. And that's an easy one to latch on to. Yes.
It's my belief, and I do believe I'm raised Mexican, Latino, whatever you want to say, and I probably won't believe it, but you are reincarnated with all that sense. And that's why you are familiar with it, because you've been there, you've seen it, you've felt it, and it's
I believe the same exact thing. Basically, we got certain intuitions. That where does that? Where I know, things are going to happen. Sometimes I'll have a premonition. Yeah.
I actually drowned when I was 3 years old.
Whoa.
And I was under the water for, I think, 6 to 8 minutes. And when I got out of the hospital, my uncle sat me down and asked me what I saw. And I told him at 3 years old that I saw beautiful lights, white lights, and I heard beautiful music, and I did this to him. Now, I don't know if I had seen that before, but at 3
can't deny, what actually really happens to you. That's kind of like my story. It sounds kind of fantastic, and come on, but listen, I've carried this dream or this vision with me for 70 years. It's never changed, and I believe in it with all my heart. I can't deny it. I went through it. This wasn't a dream. This was actually me remembering what happened before I was born. So I don't know. Now I'm getting really worried because God let me know this, and well, a few other people, but you had to almost die to have the experience. But there's something out there, after you die, and you felt good, right? That's what I'm planning on, I'm not afraid of death because I think it's going to be wonderful moving on to the next phase. It is, So there's nothing to worry about there. So that's the bottom line, I guess, of my talk, is that this was my experience, this is my story, and I'm sticking to it. So, I don't know if I could add a whole lot more to that without rambling.
Celebration Circle's been meeting for 33 years of Sundays. Our guiding principle has been and is that we have no answers, just questions. And that we walk along each other asking questions, listening for answers. There is no one path. There are 35 or so people in this room. I'm guessing there's at least 34 paths. Some of you might have been told by your spouse what your path is. But the truth, that's a bad joke. I take that back. The truth of the matter is, wherever your path has led you, it has brought you to this moment. And whatever your faith background and whatever your future, this moment invites you to inhabit it fully. So with your eyes open or your eyes closed, won't you take a moment just to be here? To hear that Michael has spoken his truth into the room. And now in the silence of your heart, feel the truth of your being in this room. Knowing it's not a Catholic being or a Buddhist being or an atheist being, but simply who you are, separate from any thoughts or feelings you may have about it. Feel the freshness of this moment. No phone calls, no texts, no emails, no TV, just you and the essence of who you are. Rest in that awareness, in the space between your thoughts. Peace. Be still. If at any point your mind drifts off to other thoughts and fantasies, simply notice. There is no right way or wrong way to be still. Just this way. Present with what is. And from this place, you're invited to open your heart to embrace the suffering of others, the suffering of those in Gaza, those in Kerrville, the suffering of those living with cancer, the suffering of those who are living with so much money they don't know what to do with themselves, much less all that money. The suffering of those who have no food and no money. We all suffer. There is no comparing suffering. But from this place of peace and quiet, won't you just open your heart to the suffering of the world? And send forth your love and your light. And finally, invite you to rest in gratitude for what is and what is becoming. May you, may we, may all beings be blessed by your willingness to do this. And so it is.